Okay, so we
So,
can start with the Mangala Charan and then we can hand over to you, Prabhuji.
yes, that's great. Do we have Sashwin back or he's still at school?
Ashwin is probably still at
Oh,
school.
okay.
I think he'll join from Thursday onwards.
Okay.
I won't be there for 10 days. So he's going to be doing, he'll be hosting the sessions
Okay.
with his
Fine.
dad. Okay,
Oh,
so
yes,
let's
yes,
start.
yes.
Prashanatma Prabhu, are you able to do the Mangala Charan today?
Hare Krishna, done but pronounced. The dogs
Jai
are
Hari
Hare
quite
Krishna.
Prasanatma Prabhu, Haribol.
horrible. My dogs are quite making a bit of a disturbance. I don't know if it's a problem.
It's okay. It's okay, but we would like you to listen to your Mangala Charan. We don't
Okay.
mind the dogs in the background.
Yeah, that's okay. They can chant Hare Krishna also. As
Okay,
Prabhupada said, even a dog can participate.
yeah, good. Okay. Om Jnana Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Abhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanditam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhani Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Pancha Kalpata Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Jai.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva
Jeepasubhascha Patitanam
Yo
Pavane
Vaishnavibhyo Namo
Namaha. So now we have a reading
Hare Krishna,
from
thank you very much, Prabhu.
Haribol. Shall I start?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, there is a lag from my side. Yes, there's a lag from my side, so kindly start.
Okay, Jai, thank you. A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 8, and not Text 20, which is next week. But I could give next week's class today, but no, I won't. Okay, fine. You've twisted my arm. The first step in God realization. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Aditavan Dwaparadyo Pitur Dvaipayanidam. Translation. At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The statement made by the statement made by Srila Shukadeva Goswami that the topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations and restrictions, mainly takes to task of hearing about and glorifying the personality of Godhead, is verified by his personal example. Shukadeva Goswami, being a recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit. He cites from the example of his life that he himself was attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord. And he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Sri Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other scientific literature, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. One has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books under the guidance of learned professors. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of the science of Godhead, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of another great soul, Sri Narada Muni. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed a learned Brahmin to study Srimad Bhagavatam from a personal Bhagavat. Srimad Bhagavatam is based on the transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, entourage, and variegatedness of the Supreme Person, and it is spoken by the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, Srila Vyasadeva. Pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation with his pure devotees, and consequently historical incidences are mentioned in this great literature because they are related to Krishna. It is called Brahma Samitam because it is the sound representative of Lord Krishna, like the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. As stated in the beginning of this book, it is the essence of the Vedic desire tree and the natural commentation on Brahma Sutras, the topmost philosophical thesis on the subject matter of Brahman. Vyasadeva appeared at the end of Dwapara Yuga as the son of Satyavati, and therefore the word Dwapara Ado, or the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, in this context means just prior to the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The logic of this statement, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, is comparable to that of calling the upper portion of the tree the beginning. The root of the tree is the beginning of the tree, but in common knowledge, the upper portion of the tree is first seen. In that way, the end of the tree is accepted as its beginning. Om Gyana Timirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmalitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, I can see what you mean when you commented how this particular canto, certainly this chapter, is getting a little bit technical. It appears to not quite flow the same way as the first canto that we just completed. And of course, I'm reading this verse in purport for the first time now, just this minute, because I studied another verse. But there's lots and lots of really deep stuff here that Prabhupada is describing. So first of all, the Srimad Bhagavatam at the time of Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami reciting it, it was recited in the previous yuga. It was recited in the Dwapara Yuga. So that's when Shukadeva Goswami heard it from his father, Srila Vyasadeva, who's considered to be the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we see how even Srila Vyasadeva, who is none other than the Lord himself in a literary form, he took his instructions from Sri Narad. And in the middle of the purport, you'll notice Srila Prabhupada saying that one has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books on the guidance of the learned professors. We have a learned professor here with us now today. So we're taking the guidance of our learned professor for the last few years since we started these classes. Although Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his father, Vyasadeva, who compiled Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of Narad. So Prabhupada gives the example here that if you want to learn physiognomy, then you have to learn it from somebody who's a learned professor who can teach you. If you want to learn how to be a lawyer, then you have to learn from somebody who's studied law. If you want to learn to be a mechanic, you have to learn from somebody who knows how to deal with cars. If you want to learn how to sweep the street, you have to learn from somebody who's already engaged in that activity. It doesn't matter what we do in life. Somebody is in junior school, somebody is going to first year in primary school. They have to learn from somebody who's a teacher who's already, even if you go to kindergarten, it doesn't matter what level of life we're on, we learn from somebody who's done it or experienced it or had the knowledge of whatever it is before us. And Prabhupada says, pastimes of the Lord, and this is a very important point. It just struck me just now. Pastimes of the Lord are executed, and what's the next part? In cooperation with his pure devotees. So this is the essential part. The pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation. We cooperate. We operate together. The Lord operates with us. We operate with the Lord. If one is on the transcendental platform, then automatically these activities become normal. It's not like in our situation these days, then we may feel to some extent, I can only speak for myself here. I'm not disparaging anybody here. I'm always speaking for myself. But we may feel to some extent that engaging in Krishna consciousness, it's something that we do that's over there. We wake up in the morning, we take bath, we go to Mangalarti if we're living in a temple, and we engage in the morning program. It's something we have to do because as we go through the ritual. It's not so much a natural state of our consciousness that we just blend into the devotional life and it's seamless. Of course, it's not seamless. We're living in Kali Yuga. But for the devotees who are engaged to the fullest extent, the pure devotees, for them it's seamless. It's not like a separate endeavor that is divorced from their real life, so to speak. Well, like I could say that my real life is I'm engaged in this kind of a career opportunity. I'm engaged as a doctor, I'm engaged as a lawyer, I'm engaged as a street sweeper or a driver or a president or a king or whatever. And that's my real life. And then I might take an interest in spirituality. But it's the other way around. For the devotee, then he is engaged 100% in his occupation, if you can call it that, of engaging in the service of the Lord, because he's on the pure Brahmabhuta platform. So we may not be reaching that stage, but to the extent that we have made some progress in spiritual life, to that extent, then we have come so far. We cannot measure ourselves against the likes of Jiva Goswami, because we're not Jiva Goswami, we're not Prabhupada, we're not Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, we're not Mahaprabhu. We cannot measure us. We're all individuals, but we all have an individual relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that individual relationship with the Supreme Lord is manifest slowly, slowly, slowly. It may appear to be too slowly to those of us who want instant gratification, because in this age, unfortunately, instant gratification is the order of the day. We need to have instant gratification for no matter what we do. But it doesn't work like that. Even in mundane life, it doesn't work like that. You put a seed in the ground, you don't get the fruit the next day. It takes time before you reach a harvest. And Prabhupada said, when a woman becomes when a woman becomes a wife, she may want children, but your desire to have children doesn't happen instantaneously. It takes time. And then the end result is the child is born. But you have to wait. It doesn't happen in a second. So your desire and the gap between your desire and the manifestation of that desire, that's where we want to bridge that gap and make the manifestation of our desire to become devotees less and less and less as we progress or regress with each passing day. So that's a tall order. And because we're in the age of Kali, of course, we want instantaneous success. But it doesn't work like that. We have to be patient, not only with the process, we have to be patient also with ourselves. So as we can ultimately realize, it has to come from realization. And ultimately, that realization has to come from natural result of our understanding of the servant attitude that we should inherently have. That is there. It's there. The service attitude is there. But the fact remains is that if we resist it, then it's not allowed to come out. It's not allowed to be manifested. So we're covered. For now, we're covered. But Prabhupada is saying here that the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed a learned Brahmin to study Srimad Bhagavatam from a personal Bhagavat. Srimad Bhagavatam is based on a transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, entourage. This is also important. Krishna doesn't come in isolation. He doesn't manifest his pastimes in isolation. He manifests his pastimes regardless of the avatar, regardless of the incarnation. He manifests his pastimes in conjunction with his devotees. Now, some of those devotees, they may be playing the role of opposition. They may be playing the role of the demon, like, for instance, Kamsa. We've been discussing about Kamsa, and he's playing the role of the demon. Hiranyakashipu playing the role of the demon. They're all playing roles. Ravan, the same thing. But they're all ultimately devotees. We're all ultimately devotees. We can't forget that. They're engaged in this mundane activity on a temporary basis. I mean, the mundane activity on the temporary basis, it may seem like a long time, because we're measuring it in the mundane sense, in the material sense, we're measuring it on time. And time, in the material sense, it has an effect. Time exists in the spiritual world. That's a fact. Krishna wakes up in the morning. What does he do? The first thing we read from Krishna book, when Krishna wakes up in the morning, the first thing he does, he chants Gayatri. Why would Krishna chant Gayatri? But there are different sections in the daytime when Krishna goes through the different aspects of playing the role of a king in Dwarka, for example, or playing the role as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. Well, he doesn't play that role. He is a cowherd boy. But you know what I mean. So it's not that time doesn't exist. There is morning, there is late morning, there is afternoon, there's evening, there's nighttime, there's Rasa Leela pastimes that go on in the middle of the night, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting how the Krishna book is describing in the Rasa Leela pastime, which is coming up pretty soon, And when Krishna danced with the gopis on the full moon night, then it is described in Krishna book, they danced with Krishna for a night of Brahma. And yet, the next morning they all went back to their husbands, their boyfriends, their whatever, their sons, whatever the case may be. But so where's the concept of time there? The concept of time is it's completely alien to us. So time in the spiritual world, it is there, but it has no effect. That's the difference. On us, it has an effect. I can see it. I look in the mirror, and there's all these gray hairs and wrinkles and everything like that. And I was looking at a photograph today of me that my mother took with me and my sister in a studio when we were 4 and 3 years old. I'm looking, is that the same person? I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. And yet we are the same person. But the difference from the physical point of view is completely alien. But that's what it is. The time, it has a serious effect on us in the material sense, but in the spiritual sense, while time exists, it has no effect. Just like Prabhupada explained so many times, when Krishna was fighting in the Battle of Kurukshetra, he was considered to be 125 years old. And yet he appeared like a 16, 18-year-old boy, driving Arjuna's chariot. But he was 120 on our calculations in the time that he was with us here on the planet. 125 years old, but he wasn't 125. So the concept of time is completely alien. But the concept of time also, time I am, the destroyer of all these things, the destroyer of all these worlds. Krishna says it in Bhagavad Gita. Time destroys everything. No matter how brilliant the foundation of an empire is, if we look at the pyramids in Egypt, I mean, what kind of an amazing archaeological legacy that they've left. This amazing thing. There's so many structures like that all around the world, almost like as if they were built by aliens. It's inconceivable today. The big empires, Roman Empire, British Empire in recent times. So many empires have come and gone. Even in India, we had the Empire of Ashoka. Gone. So many statues are there, so many this and so many that, and so many memories recorded in history, but they're all gone now. So time is a serious element. So here, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that the pastimes of the Lord are executed in cooperation with the pure devotees, and consequently, historical incidences are mentioned in this great literature because they are related to Krishna, for no other reason, because they're related to Krishna. Otherwise, they have no point. They may appear to be divorced, like when you hear of Indra getting in Maya and being cursed, and he's covered in all these, because of his lusty desires, he's covered in all these eyes all over his body as a result of his lust. Or even Brahma, the head of our Sampradaya, he fell into Maya when he stole the cows and the cowherd boys. He fell into Maya when also he was chasing his own daughter, but he gave up his body. There's so many aspects of material life that is just almost incomprehensible for us. And this particular chapter is now kind of going into, it appears from an external point of view that it's kind of going into the realms of criticizing those who are in family life. It's not really criticizing, but it's mentioning the fact that family life is a temporary measure. We've gone through so many families. We've had so many fathers and mothers and sons and daughters and husbands and wives and in so many species of life. And we become attached. So that it's not that it's denigrating family life or denigrating these natural propensities to engage in a loving reciprocation with one's family members, or even society, or even nation. But what it's trying to teach us, trying to impart a message that all of these are temporary and they have to be given up at some point in time. So it's preparing us for that point in time. Like Maharaj Parikshit, he gave up the ultimate sacrifice. He gave up his life. He left his kingdom. He left his family. He left all his wealth, his honor, his prestige, everything. That's it. He just left everything. He had 7 days to live. And then all of this Srimad Bhagavatam is given to us, just like the Bhagavad Gita. It contains so much deep knowledge. And it's explained by Prabhupada in different places. He gives different times. But mostly Prabhupada says the Bhagavad Gita was recited, the exchange between Krishna and Arjuna, an hour and a half at the most. And yet we can spend lifetimes in study of the deep philosophical context. But an hour and a half. So this Srimad Bhagavatam, which we have been on, what is it now, 2 years on the first canto, and you know, we're just scratching the surface. This was spoken in 7 days. So imagine the intelligence that is there in Shukadeva Goswami, the intelligence that is there in Maharaj Parikshit, not only to listen attentively and be careful to not miss a single answer that was given by Shukadeva Goswami, but also to have the deeper intelligence to be able to ask the right question at the right time on our behalf. That's why it is so deep, this Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a postgraduate study, as Prabhupada is saying here. It is called Brahma Samitam because it is the sound representation of the Lord. Just like when we're chanting our japa, it is the sound representation of the Lord. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole pastimes of the Supreme Lord, the whole spiritual world is contained in the Maha Mantra. But because we can't understand that, because it's like the whole attributes of an oak tree are contained within the seed of the oak tree. But we can't understand that. That was described in the pastime with Narada Rishi. Narada Rishi was on his way to see Lord Vishnu. It's a famous pastime. I'm repeating something that everybody knows, but just for the example. Narada Rishi is on his way to see Lord Vishnu, and on his way, the Brahman says, "Oh, you're going to see Lord Vishnu? Yes. So please ask him when you get to see him, when will I go to Vaikuntha? When will my material life be over?" And then he goes on his way and he sees the cobbler, and the cobbler says, "Oh, you're going to see Lord Vishnu? Please beg him for whatever mercy he's willing to give. I'd be very happy. Thank you very much." So then when he gets to see Lord Vishnu, imagine the power, the potency of Narada Rishi. He could go anywhere. So he gets to see Lord Vishnu and he has a nice engagement with Lord Vishnu. They sit down, they drink their herbal tea together, and they have a really good time. And Narada Rishi says, "Oh, I met the Brahmin on the way here and the cobbler." And yeah, oh, how are they? What were they doing? Well, the Brahmin was asking, when is he going back to the spiritual world? And the cobbler was asking the same thing. So then Lord Vishnu, he says, "Well, tell them both that I was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle." And Narada Rishi went back, told the Brahmin, "How is that possible? Nobody can put an elephant through the eye. That's impossible." When he told the cobbler that, Lord Vishnu was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle, and he said, "Well, if you can put a whole tree into a seed, then of course my Lord is capable of anything." Lord Vishnu told Narada, "The cobbler will go back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. The Brahmin, no way." because he doesn't have that faith, he doesn't have that devotion. He's seeing it from an empirical point of view, from an academic point of view. He's going through the motions of his mantras and tantras and yantras and pantras and all that. But it's not possible from an academic perspective to achieve that. It simply doesn't work. It works on bhakti. It works on devotion. That's what the requirement is. And if that devotion, that kernel, that seed of bhakti, the bhakti lata bij, as we say, we use that expression, the bhakti lata bij, it needs to be nourished, it needs to be watered, it needs to be cultivated, it needs to be protected at all times. And if it's not protected, it can wither, and the weeds will grow up around it and smother it, and then it's lost. And it's not that it's impossible to lose it. We see so many times. Some of our senior followers have drifted away, gone their own way, gone by the wayside. So Prabhupada is saying here, like the Bhagavad Gita is the sound incarnation of the Lord because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representative of the Lord because it was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. So it doesn't matter what we're doing. If it's engaged in the service of the Lord, it's connected with the Lord. That is devotional service. Prabhupada uses the expression dovetail. Now, dovetail is it's a joint that's used in woodwork by expert woodworkers. They use this dovetailing joint, so you fit one piece of wood to another, and they won't come apart. It's in a V shape that's dovetailed on the end of a joint of wood. Very solid. It's almost like you take two pieces of wood, you join them together in this dovetail, and it's almost impossible to separate them once they're joined together by the expert carpenter. So Prabhupada uses this expression many, many times. We dovetail our desires, we dovetail our ambitions, we dovetail whatever propensities we have, we dovetail it in the service of the Lord. We don't have to give up anything artificially or in a way that's completely at variance with our natural propensities. We just dovetail those propensities in the service of the Lord. It was spoken by the incarnation of the Lord about the activities of the Lord. As stated in the beginning of this book, it is the essence of the Vedic desire tree. The Vedic desire tree and the natural commentation on Brahma Sutras, the topmost philosophical thesis on the subject matter of Brahman. Vyasadeva appeared at the end of Dwapara Yuga as the son of Satyavati. Therefore, the word Dwapara Ado, or the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, is the context, means just prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga. So, we don't have to engage in some academic approach or academic pursuits, even though we're dealing with, to some degree, with some technical. We just have to go with the flow, and from within the heart, the Lord will reveal as our propensity also broadens, just like the lotus flower. When it comes in contact with the sun, immediately it opens out. The topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations and restrictions, mainly takes to the task of hearing about and glorifying the personality of Godhead, is verified by his personal example, Shukadeva Goswami. It's verified by his personal example. So to some extent, there are certain people who they see the Lord in different ways. They see in a personal way, in an impersonal way. They see, like in when I was in Kenya, I remember the Kikuyu tribe, they call the Lord Ngai. And for the Kikuyus, Ngai lives in Mount Kenya. So there's a personal connection there. We don't know where the history of that is coming from, but as there's a personal connection with the Lord is a person. Of course, when the Wazungu came along, they of course preached a different philosophy, a different religion, and they negated the traditional African take or different African understanding of God. But nonetheless, we can see that the African understanding of God was more personal than the Western Abrahamic religions, and they presented the impersonal aspect of God. So the impersonal aspect, you could say, would be like Krishna is describing it in Bhagavad Gita, or Arjuna, when he in the universal form, where Arjuna is saying to Krishna in the 11th chapter, obeisances to you from the front, obeisances to you from all sides, O unbounded power, you are the master of limitless might, you are all pervading, and thus you are everything, almost like the pantheistic approach to the Supreme Lord. Pantheistic means in the sense that some people, they worship God by looking at the stars, by looking at the universe, by saying, oh, what a wonderful creation it is. And that's a fact. And it is a wonderful creation. And it is inconceivable how far that we have, so many satellites going into outer space, and so many telescopes, and the Hubble telescope, and it's looking at the vast reaches of the universe. How far does it extend? And still it expands and expands and expands. The karmis can't understand that, how it's constantly expanding, and they never reach. And then, just like the material world, in this tiny, tiny little universe, we know from Krishna book how our Brahma, with the 4 heads, was put in his place by Krishna when he went to visit Krishna in Dwarka, and Krishna called all the other Brahmas to come and see him. Because when Brahma went to the gate in Dwarka, and the gatekeeper, he said, so who's here to see Krishna? He said, tell him it's Brahma. And the gatekeeper reported to Krishna, Brahma is here. And Krishna went back and said, which Brahma? Of course, Brahma was like, what? Which Brahma? And then, of course, he had to describe himself, his person, the Brahma with 4 heads. So then he was called in by Krishna, and Krishna called all the other Brahmas. 10 heads, 20 heads, 100 heads, 1,000 heads, 1,000,000 heads. Brahma was like, wow. So we're in a tiny, tiny, microscopic little universe. It's described as like the universe, like a mustard seed in a sack of mustard seeds. Unlimited. And that's the material sphere, which is considered to be a quarter of the size of the spiritual world. So it's like, I mean, are we going to get into all that? I mean, it's just inconceivable. So we don't need to bother our heads with this. We know it's there. Like so many debates going on, how far does it go, and this and that and the other, and the karmis will speculate, but it's all in the Bhagavatam. It's described in detail. From the insignificant amoeba down right up to the spiritual world, everything is described in great detail. Now, it's only in the past 100 years or so that we've begun to understand the development of the child in the womb, from the time of conception right through the different stages of pregnancy. And all of these are described in Srimad Bhagavatam in great detail from thousands of years ago. And yet the so-called modern scientists, they think, oh yeah, we know more. We know everything. Not only do they think they know everything, but they denigrate the Srimad Bhagavatam and say it's insignificant. It's not science. Yet their science changes every day. And tomorrow there's a new fashion and a new theory and a new scientific so-called discovery. Just like the Wazungu discovered America. Discovered America? Like it didn't exist before we went there. We had to give our stamp of approval. We discovered the source of the Nile. There's a plaque at the source of the Nile at Jinja saying how it was discovered by Speak. I saw it there myself. I used to live in Uganda. I mean, what kind of arrogance is that? It's insanity. We discovered, and before our discovery, it didn't exist. There were no tribes, there were no nations, there were no kingdoms in Africa before we went there. We don't know anything. The arrogance is absolutely astounding. So it all boils down, when a push comes to a shove, it all boils down to the amount of energy and time and effort and diligence that we invest in our mala. That's what it boils down to. Everything boils down to that. I read a wonderful letter from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, who wrote to one of his disciples. And he's saying, I'll quote it, "I'm overjoyed to hear that your enthusiasm for chanting is increasing. As our contaminations are removed by chanting," see, the contamination itself is removed by chanting. There are offenses, yes, and we must carefully guard against them. But that doesn't mean we should stop. The offenses will be removed by chanting. The Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes will be revealed to us in the holy name. And this is in every scripture. Satatam kirtayanto mam, always chanting my glories. Jesus Christ says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I amongst them. This is very, very important. It's in all the scriptures. It's in the Quran, it's in the Bible, it's in the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. I mean, it's everywhere. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he goes on to say, there is no point in making a separate effort to artificially remember the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes. There's no point. This is an interesting fact. The Lord and his name are one and the same. This will be understood clearly when the coverings in your heart are removed. So that sounds like a catch-22. So how do we remove the coverings in our heart? Remove the coverings in our heart by chanting. Even if those coverings are there, it's like peeling off an onion. You just peel one layer and one layer and one layer, and just it doesn't stop. It goes on forever. It's like trying to, again, always, I speak for myself, it's like trying to wash a piece of coal. You put a piece of coal under the tap and you wash it, it still comes black and black and black and black. It's just constant. The carbon just washes off forever. By chanting without offenses, you will personally realize that all perfections come from the holy name. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj goes on to say, through chanting, the distinction that exists between the self, this is important, the distinction that exists between the self, the gross and subtle bodies, is gradually effaced. It's gone, gradually effaced, as one realizes one's own spiritual form. We also have a form. And this form that we have is not the form that you see here sitting before you on the screen. We have a completely different form from this one. This is subject to decay, is subject to annihilation, subject to deprivation. It's gone. It's only a question of time. So once aware of the spiritual body, as one continues to chant, one sees the transcendental nature of the Lord's form. One sees the transcendental nature. And what is that verse in the Gita that we always quote? Tadvidi pranipatena pari prashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. What is that last line? Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. The tattva darshan. He has the darshan of the tattva. He has the darshan of the truth. He has the darshan. The guru has the darshan of the Supreme Lord. So many times Prabhupada would quote that verse because Prabhupada had the darshan of Krishna. Prabhupada said when Prabhupada was in Mexico City, I think it was 73 or 74, and while Prabhupada was visiting Mexico, Prabhupada loved it. He loved the Mexicans. He loved their devotion. Coming from a Catholic background, they have this devotion to Mary. So they invested that devotion to Mary and devotion to Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada loved seeing the way people blossomed just when they were given the right direction. He loved it. He thrived on it. But while Prabhupada was in Mexico, the BBC sent by express mail, they sent the book that had just come out in Spanish, the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto. They sent it to Prabhupada while he was in Mexico. And Prabhupada was sitting in the room, and Hridayananda Maharaj was the secretary because it was his zone. And he came into the room. Prabhupada was reading the Spanish Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said jokingly to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, do you read Spanish? Prabhupada says, no, I don't read a word of Spanish, but these are Krishna's words. I didn't write these books. Krishna wrote these books. I just put them down as Krishna dictated them to me. And now you have graciously translated these books into so many languages around the world. Prabhupada said, I read my own books every day because I get so much nectar from reading my own books. I get so much realization from reading my own books because these books were dictated by Krishna. These books are Krishna's words. We shouldn't think that the purport is in any way different from the verse. I remember when I was in Potomac, we did a book called Pictures from the Bhagavad Gita. Satsrup Maharaj, he did a very special book, Pictures from the Bhagavad Gita, where he described that every single word, every single line of Prabhupada's purports are actually verses from other scriptures. They're just taken in such a way they're put into modern day English, just like when we used to do Shakespeare in school. It was incomprehensible, absolutely incomprehensible. Oh my God, it used to drive me mad, trying to figure out what these people, and they're speaking in English. But years later, when people started to do Shakespeare in modern English setting, then it's revealed. So Prabhupada has taken all these complicated aphorisms in Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's put them in such a way that everything just flows into natural, modern, everyday English that we can all relate to. What does artificial remember the Lord mean? I don't know what that means. That needs to be rephrased, that question. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj goes on to say, only the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's form. So what is this saying? This is saying that the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being. So the holy name will give you your spiritual form, will give you an insight, a realization into your spiritual form. Remember, we discussed that previously in so many classes, that the second biggest seller in the world, that was translated in so many languages, The Science of Self-Realization, another very famous book, The Journey of Self-Discovery. So these are very famous books. They sell just as much, if not the same, as the Bhagavad Gitas we have sold in so many languages. The Journey of Self-Discovery, The Science of Self-Realization. If I don't understand who I am, how can I understand my Creator? How can I understand the Supreme Lord? So these two are firmly connected and related to each other. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is saying here, only the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's form. And we see that, we experience that all the time. I mean, every devotee who's been around for a while will tell you that when you're serving in a particular temple, you automatically become attracted to that particular deity. you automatically become attracted to serving that particular deity. And when you're transferred, or you have to, for whatever circumstance, you're transferred to another temple, then you become attracted to that deity. You engage. As soon as I see a picture, a photograph of the deities where I've served in a particular temple, I know me. Oh, that's so and so, so and so. That's Radha Madan Mohan. That's Radha Shamasundar. That's Radha this. That's Radha that. Whatever it might be. Immediately, you know, because you've served in that. With that, you develop a relationship. I remember when I used to be pujari, particularly in Mombasa with Rukmini Dwarkadish. There were so few of us. And you wake up in the morning, take your shower. If I had to wake up the deity, I'd go in and switch off the air conditioning. The deity had air conditioning going all night because it was so hot. You switch off the air conditioning, go into the altar and wake up the deity with the mantras that we wake the. I mean, it was such a thrill. It's such a thrill. You develop this immediate connection. You offer the sweets. You wake them up with mantras, and you give argyam and so many different things. I mean, it's very difficult to not develop a personal relationship with the deity and treat the deity as a person. Because the deity is always a person. Krishna is always a person. It's just that some of us, we're fortunate in some circumstances that we get that personal seva. We get to engage in a personal capacity by serving the deity. I mean, it's such a wonderful experience. But then that is there eternally. Where we know from Chaitanya Charitamrita how the Brahmin boy who was traveling with the older Brahmin and who had been promised his daughter in marriage, and then when he got back home he refused, and then the boy went back to the temple where they had been on pilgrimage and told the deity, "You have to come and give this witness. This man is now denying." He wasn't concerned about himself. He wasn't concerned about the fact that the daughter of the Brahmin, the older Brahmin, was now not going to marry him. That wasn't his primary concern. His concern was, this man, this Brahmin, he has given his word in front of the deity, and now he's not fulfilling his word. So the repercussions from that would be that he'd have to suffer. So he told the deity, "You have to come and you have to give witness." And then there's Sakshi Gopal, my very good friend Sakshi Gopal, who lives not too far from me. He's a very nice devotee. He leads a lot of the Harinams in London on Saturday night. He's a very famous kirtan singer. But Sakshi Gopal, he said to the Brahmin boy, "But a deity can't walk. Whoever heard of a walking deity?" And the Brahmin boy, he immediately responded, "Well, whoever heard of a talking deity? You're talking to me, so why can't you walk?" So this is a personal reciprocation. There's so many devotees, even today, not even from the books, not even from the scriptures. So many devotees, even today, will describe to you so many experiences they've had, personal experiences with deities relating to them, and all this is revealed through the power of the chanting of the holy names, through our japa mala, through kirtan, through singing the glorify. Prabhupada started this movement under a tree, singing the Maha Mantra. Even a dog can participate. Even a child can participate. Prabhupada said that famous record. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual qualities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's qualities. This is Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master speaking here. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual activities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's pastimes. By service to the holy name, we do not mean only the chanting of the holy name. That's not the only thing. It also includes the other duties of the chanter. If we serve the holy name with the body, mind, and soul, then the direction of that service spontaneously manifests like the sun in the clear sky of the chanter's heart. This is wonderful. This is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, a beautiful writer. Again, very deep English, but Srila Prabhupada, He has brought this very deep technical knowledge in such a way that anybody can understand it. All we have to do is have the sincerity of intention to want to understand it, to want to give up this material aspect of our lives. What is the nature of the holy name, he goes on to say? Eventually, all these understandings spontaneously appear in the heart of one who chants the holy name. The true nature of Harinam is revealed by listening to, reading, and studying the scriptures. It is unnecessary to write anything further on this subject, he writes to his disciple. It is unnecessary. All these things will be revealed to you through chanting. So this is like absolutely crucial. This was in 1928. So it's very, very important that we just take the process seriously and understand that we're not expected to be Mahabhagavats overnight. We're not expecting, that we should know everything overnight and all the revealed scriptures will be manifest in our heart in a second. At least with Maharaj Pariksit, it took him 7 days. So it may take us 7 years, 70 years, 700 years. Who cares? We started on the process. We started on the path. As Confucius, the ancient Chinese philosopher, used to say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we have to start somewhere. So we've already done the first canto. We're now on the second canto. So we're engaged in worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord. This is our foundation. Lord Krishna, he stands on his feet. So this is our foundation. We're worshipping the feet of the Lord. We have a glorious future. Prabhupada said in another place in Vrindavan, I think the lecture was in Vrindavan in the early 70s. Prabhupada said, and this is in like 71 or 72. We're just beginning to take effect on the world. We just opened the temple in London. We just begun to move out of America, start opening centers all over the world. And Hare Krishna was a household name. They just popped up out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. I remember when I was temple president in Mombasa, I was walking along Moy Avenue where those big tusks are, and I met these German tourists, and I speak German. They said to each other, "Wow, these Hare Krishnas are everywhere. You can't get away from them. You can't. It's a fact. You can't get away from them. They're everywhere." So Prabhupada said, they are now feeling the weight of this movement. Formerly, they thought that these people would come and go, but now they see we are staying. Now we have set a fire. It will go on. It cannot be stopped. You can bring big fire brigades, but the fire will act. The brainwash books are already there. Prabhupada's talking about his own books, because we were accused of brainwashing people by the New York court. And we were brought to the Supreme Court in the state of New York, in Manhattan, and Prabhupada sent the devotees every day to the court, and Prabhupada instructed them what to say. It went on for weeks. Those who were detractors, who didn't like the movement, didn't like the success of the movement, the other religionists, they brought this case against us. We were brainwashing their sons and daughters. So they literally brought a case, and the Supreme Court charged us with brainwashing, or the Attorney General. So you can even if they stop externally, internally it will go on. Our first-class campaign is book distribution. Go house to house. The real fighting is now. Krishna will give you all protection. So chant Hare Krishna and fight. Prabhupada said, by propaganda, you cannot suppress the truth. You cannot suppress fire by propaganda. Now we have to become strong to defend. The fighting has become acute. But if you stick to the regulative principles, Krishna will give you all strength. Whatever is done by Krishna's mercy. They are afraid that a different culture is conquering over their culture. So we have it there. They don't understand, because there's no concept of the spiritual world. There's no concept of spiritual life. There's no concept of Goloka Vrindavan in the minds of the mundane materialists. It doesn't exist. We're introducing something that to them appears to come from outer space. It does come from outer space. It comes from a different realm, different consciousness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, in another treatise, he wrote that like we think and we feel in the material world, we think, we feel, we will in 3 dimensions. There's length, breadth, and height. So we're living in a 3-dimensional world. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said in the spiritual world there are millions of dimensions. It's inconceivable to us. So why do we need to bother our heads with all this stuff? Just chant Hare Krishna, take prasadam, dance, chant in ecstasy, and your life will be sublime. Imba Hare Krishna, ufalahafa, Sandio. So that's all we need to do. Just chant the holy names of the Lord, and everything else falls into place. We just have to have that little seed of faith and fructify it and blow in it. Oh my God, it's after 7. Sorry, I've gone over the time. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji, even we noticed that it was after 9. So we have exhausted our time. Are there any burning questions or comments from the group?
No, we don't need burning questions. No
If there are
burning
no questions.
please. No burning questions, please. We don't want any fire. We don't want any fire. Let's remain calm.
Fighting questions. Fighting questions.
Jai.
I hand over to Path Prema Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam. Are you able to end the session?
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna Path Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prashana
Just
Prabhu.
Haribol.
Yes.
Just one small question. Also, there's a question in it's your question, Mataji, in the chat.
Yes,
Okay.
but I think can't rephrase it because
Because
that's
of time.
what Prabhuji said. But anyway, you ask your question.
Okay. I was asking, in the purport it says that you can't study on your own at home, but also we are. It's part of the instructions that we should read for a certain period during every day on our own. So
Yes.
I was just wondering how is that supposed to go?
A nice question. Yeah, exactly. So how do we do that? Of course, when to give a mundane example, if you're studying law, you're going to university, you're studying law, you want to become a lawyer, you want to become a doctor, whatever the case may be, an engineer, you're studying under somebody who's already an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor. So, and during the course of your studies in class, in lectures, they will give you some assignment to do, and you go off and you do that assignment, whatever it may be, under the guidance of the professor who's teaching you in the class, in the lecture hall. And then you will study under him. So you'll go and you take the books from the university, you'll go home and you'll study, you do your assignment, and you bring it back for the professor to gauge whether you have appreciated or understood what has been taught in class. So that's what is meant by this. Prabhupada is saying, yeah, you study under the guidance of a spiritual master, and yeah, we should study at home, we should study in our rooms, we should study in the temple, whatever the case may be, but everything is done under the guidance of the Guru. And in this way we can make progress. Does that answer the question?
Yes, understood.
Right.
Prabhu, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for the wonderful class.
Thank you very much, Prashanatma Prabhu, for a wonderful question. Maybe you can end the session as well. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thanks so much, Vidura Prabhu.
Thank you.
because of time, I won't say much, but thank you for giving your valuable time always to come and be with us. And it's a wonderful Sangha, this one, and we get to learn a lot. So also the devotees who are able to participate, I thank you all of you for giving your association and giving our time, and hoping that we may continue in this mood, in this spirit, and because it helps us to gain a lot. So I will request all the devotees, we can please unmute and appreciate Vidura Prabhu by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra in glorification. So please let's join. Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama, Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhishta,
Vanchakalpatarubhishta,
Kripa Sindhu Pacha,
Krishna.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Jai. Shri Vaishnav
Srila
Thakur Ki
Prabhupada.
Jai. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you
Prabhu.
for joining us.
Jai. Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Good night, everybody.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for an excellent class. Thank you, Prashanatma Prabhu, for ending the session. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Majid and Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.